Hello, everybody. Welcome to a rather special office hours session, not just because we're on a Thursday, but we're doing a follow-up here on the webinar that Mark Baseman gave 2 days ago on migrating to the Lightning experience. We thought we'd have a discussion about some of the things that he talked about, or this would also be an opportunity to answer other questions or share some of our experience as a follow-up to the webinar. So I'm very grateful to our community experts who have volunteered their time to be with us this morning. And usually at this point in office hours, I say none of us are employees of Salesforce.org. We are all here volunteering our time because we like sharing our expertise. However, we are very grateful to be joined by one employee from Salesforce.org, but she is also volunteering her time because this wasn't really in her job description to come and help out on this. So, and I know that everyone who's here on the panel has had some experience of working in Lightning and to varying degrees, and it'll be interesting to get everybody's perspective. So as usual, I'm going to kind of start off the discussion a bit and ask the panel a few questions, but you can also please post your questions in chat. As usual for office hours, post your questions in chat first, and then we'll follow up and ask you for some more details when we answer the question. And as usual, since there are a lot of us on the call and more joining, I would be grateful if you're not speaking, please could you mute your mic throughout the session, and we'll unmute you and ask for more information when required. So thank you, and let's get started. I thought just very quickly, we don't normally all introduce ourselves on the panel, but I thought if you wouldn't mind, panel, just actually what I'd like you to do, because we kind of know who you are, you're all community rock stars, but just say a little bit about what you've been doing with Lightning. Have you been migrating people? Have you been working with new clients? And how much do you feel that you've dug into it so far? And then we'll talk a little bit about some of the kind of advantages and things that you see. So, we have a question we can come to after we've done the quick introductions. So, Christian, I think you've been doing quite a lot of diving into Lightning, haven't you?
Yeah, I've been working full-time in Lightning for about 8 months now. I've got 6 or 7 clients who are completely in Lightning, who are all new clients and new implementations. And I actually started my first migration this week, migrating our internal org to Lightning. So I have been from kind of that new client and greenfield perspective, really excited about it, but now starting to learn some of those migration challenges.
Okay, fantastic. Nick, how about you? Nick? Maybe that Minnesota snowstorm got him. Nick, are you talking to you on mute?
Say, I'm back here. I just had a little audio glitch on my end here, so thanks for stalling there for a second.
So, so Nick, what have you been? How long have you been working in Lightning? Are you working with new clients? Are you migrating clients?
It's a little bit of everything. We're in the midst of our first migration from Classic to Lightning for a client right now. We have a couple clients right now that are coming in that we are, or that are brand new that we're going with Lightning, and so we're dabbling a little bit in that. Where I've been kind of getting my feet wet in Lightning has been more kind of in our internal org, and we've been really looking at it as, hey, is Lightning a viable feature for Redpath as a Salesforce user? And so we've been trying to talk through implementation strategies, flipping the switch to see what works, what doesn't work, things along those lines has been more kind of the spearheading that we've done. And there's definitely, it's a great tool. At the same time, there's some misses. So I'm happy to talk through those as we get in.
Okay, great. Thank you. Michelle?
Yeah, I have been working with clients in Lightning probably since last September. Basically, every new implementation I've done since then has been in Lightning, and we are in the process of migrating a couple of clients over to Lightnings with various levels of complications. But I think one of my colleagues said it really well, is like Lightning has recently gotten to the point where it makes sense and is actually a really good idea to start thinking about switching over with the latest release. So that's kind of where we are in terms of internally. We've been kind of playing back and forth with Lightning for about a year now, but I think now we're kind of seeing that Lightning makes more sense for us than Classic. So we're planning on switching over internally as well.
Great. Well, you've just been asked about, having used that word complications, you've just been asked a question about it, and I'm sure we'll get back to that. Kim, just while we're going round, what about at Cloud for Good?
Yeah, I've been working in Lightning for a little over a year now, and the first Lightning org I worked with was an existing org in Classic that had a super old version of NPSP, so not only did we convert them to Lightning, we also upgraded them at the same time to current version of NPSP. And then since then, most of my Lightning work has been in new implementations, so we're implementing them for the first time in Lightning.
Fantastic. And Judi, I think the official position was it in November that you switched over, that all new trials were in Lightning?
It was shortly before Dreamforce that as a team at salesforce.org, we made the decision for the nonprofit success pack trials to go Lightning first. HITA had been that way right out of the gate. So along with Mary, our product manager, I led that project. Part of my role on the team is I maintain the configuration changes to our trial template. So I was the one who went through and had to take that trial instance and get it ready for Lightning. We went to every single page and tab and thought about what should be the default, what should be here, worked with Mark and other members of the customer success team on the home page. So that was my real deep dive in Lightning. We also started a huge project at that exact same point to convert all of the documentation to Lightning first steps. And so we worked with a lot of members of the community and our tech writers, and I was very heavily involved in that. And yeah, so as I'm supporting folks and answering questions in the hub, because new users are starting out in Lightning right away, I'm having to answer their questions with a Lightning first mentality, as well as learning it for myself.
And I'm in the rather interesting situation that my first Lightning client is somebody who has installed a managed package which was written in Lightning. So we're kind of going through this interesting process of upgrading their nonprofit success pack to Lightning to match, because when the people saw the new part of their Salesforce experience in Lightning, they were like, "Hey, can the rest of it look like this?" So it's an interesting one. Okay, thank you. That's great. I was thinking, and I think we'll just quickly reiterate. I know that a question that you got a lot yesterday on the webinar, Judi, was, is Classic going to go away? And I think we can reassure everybody it's not. But I know you were making a push really for the kind of the advantages of Lightning and reasons why people should upgrade. So I wonder, panel, if we can...
Caroline, to share, when people have been asking that question, and it came up way more than on the webinar, if you dig really deep in your Salesforce instance right now, you could probably configure a system preference somewhere that will give you even the pre-Aloha interface, and there are S controls still in there. Salesforce tend to make things absolutely inaccessible go away. There is so much in Salesforce that people are still on the individual bucket model and the old nonprofit template. But as new things come along, as you probably saw if you were on the Spring 17 release webinar, if you're still primarily on Classic, not as much interesting for you as if Lightning. So new features, and just exactly like what you just said, Caroline, somebody saw a component that only ran in Lightning and now wants that entire experience. So that's the direction going. I don't see, though, if you're in Classic, I don't see like anything necessarily is going to break or go away. You just won't get all the new stuff.
So I wonder whether, could we split the conversation a little bit into, and I do see that we have a couple of questions and we will get to them, Peter and Shia. I think there's this interesting split in the user experience, that is your Salesforce general users experience in Lightning, and there's the experience for people as an admin. And I think it may be a little harder for the admins among us because we're so used to the classic interface. But I wonder, panel, if we could just talk a little bit first about what sort of things have the users found. Are there things that you think make a huge difference to users and really make their lives easier? Because that's part of the promise of the Lightning experience, isn't it?
Yeah, and I say this all the time as kind of half joking, but Lightning is really pretty, and that makes a difference. And I will tell you, I always liken it to like when like Windows 3.1 was upgraded to Windows 95, and everyone freaked out, but it was so pretty, and it looks so much nicer. And when I recently moved a client from a Salesforce org that they had all but abandoned in Classic and moved them over to Lightning. And when they all logged in, it was like the scene from Wizard of Oz when it like goes from black and white to color. Like they were like, oh my God, this just looks so pretty. So it just gets them more, I guess, excited because it looks more accessible to them. It looks prettier. The words are easier to read. The font is bigger. And that UX like really does make a difference for users, especially if they're not users who are like who are Salesforce admin levels. On the other hand, like the setup side, I mean, probably like 70-80% of the time when I'm going in and making changes and updating things from the setup menu, I'll switch back to Classic and do all of my work and then switch back to Lightning because one, I think the way that fields are listed in Lightning still has a long way to go. It's still really difficult to navigate. Two, it's still a little bit slower in Lightning, although it is faster with the latest release. So from an admin perspective, I'm still switching back and forth between Classic and Lightning. But I think, we're going to be doing that for a while anyway, as we get used to the new system.
I think that the admin or the user, some of the pieces that I like about Lightning are, from a user's perspective, there's a little bit more flexibility in what we can provide to them in sort of a one-stop shop. So if I'm looking at a particular account or household, I can add some nicer, easier to see charts, things like that right there on the page. And if I'm doing something else like searching, and maybe I'm creating an opportunity and I don't know if this account exists or not, I can search for it, and I have more flexibility to sort of add a brand new account right there on the page without having to sort of re-navigate through the system, which is also a pretty nice feature. From an admin perspective, I agree with Michelle. I'm just so used to Classic that when I implemented Lightning for an org that was on Classic, I did all of my config and development in Classic, and the big problem that I found out was stuff that worked in Classic didn't work in Lightning, and we didn't figure that out till we flipped over. So I would caution a little bit against doing that. I learned the lesson the hard way. For example, we made, with a third-party tool, document generation, and it worked fine in Classic, but it didn't work in in Lightning because Lightning required us to use a query versus a report, and we didn't know that. So we had to kind of go back and redo a few things.
I know, Christian, you've been for a while. I was going to say, Christian, for a while you've been a huge advocate on sort of page layouts and optimizing for mobile. I think you've probably got a really good sense of how you can actually make the sort of the design and the layout of Lightning work well for people. Do you want to?
Yeah, I think as Kim said, the latest release brought a lot to the table in terms of what you can put on the page layout and in terms of what sorts of information you can. Ooh, my audio is being weird, isn't it? Oh, I'm back. What you can do there. One thing I really do want to second is that that comment about how good the search is and that ability to search for and create new accounts right in line. Anytime you're doing a lookup, being able to search for records, create new records with your default page layouts right there is amazing. And in Lightning, search itself is just better. By default, searching all objects, not having to remember how that weird pinning object types works, getting full text search and things. Lightning has better support for English language names and getting nicknames right in search. It's really, it's a big step forward.
I was just trying to see if I had a Lightning org that I could show on the screen. Is anybody got something with some data in it? Because I realize I have a completely blank Lightning org, but that's not much help for telling people about search. So if any,
Yeah,
Mark is saying he has one. Mark, how's your Wi-Fi at the airport doing then? Because we'll switch to you if you like.
I have a Lightning org open if you want.
Kim has one. Kim says she has one. Okay. So Kim, can I make you mad? Can I make you the presenter and then
sure.
Yes, because I think it might be helpful for people to see a bit more.
Yeah, so I'm on an this is not an NPSP org, but it's just a general dev org, and it's converted to Lightning. So if I went to create, for example, a new opportunity, and I don't know the account, so it's, I don't know, ABC, and I can't find ABC, I can just click new account right here, and it opens up the new account screen, and I can, fill out everything, my default page, everything I need to fill out here. I can't spell today, and whatever, click save. And then right back to my opportunity, and it's already highlighted that. And I think that's a really cool feature. Do you want me to do any kind of other searching or anything? We can do that.
Oh, that's great. I think that ability to make a new record from a related record is great. I think, Christian, you were talking more about the general search, I think, weren't you?
Yeah, just things like when you do this general search like Kim has just done, it's no longer only going to search the objects that you've already searched for before. It is searching all of your objects by default, and things like that, that are just little steps forward that make it, your users are no longer going to be like, where's my data?
Right.
Also, that top search bar has the little recently searched for, just like in Classic, but it gives you more detail. You can really see that it's the account versus the contact or something, and it's showing you all your recent items out of the box.
Yeah, and just to reflect on what Mark just posted, you can also like scope your search, like you do like in a Google search. So if you type like accounts and then the name of the account, you can have it so it will only search accounts. Oh, I think once you type accounts, it gives you the drop-down option, but yeah, like limit search to accounts, exactly. And this also works on the report page, so you don't have like the separate search boxes for reports. You can use global search to search your reports, which I thought was cool.
Oh, yeah, that's nice, isn't it? When you, because so many organizations end up with so many, this long, long list of reports, and actually kind of finding some of these things can be really useful. We might come back to the report page in a minute. Nick, we were sort of doing it around, and you didn't get a chance to talk. What are some of the things that your users have really liked about this, about Lightning? But maybe we lost Nick again. Okay, we'll keep going. Reports page. I was a little thrown the first time I came to the reports page. I guess, again, because I'm sort of used to there being so much stuff there and seeing all the folders clearly and all that kind of thing. Do you find that is there limitations in the sort of this new format, or is it just that it's kind of you have to get used to it, really? And do people like the fact that it's cleaner and less cluttered and fewer things show up when they come to it?
I think it's moving kind of the way that a lot of like document management is moving. Like if you look at Google Drive, it's not it's not focused on folders and browsing and organizing. It's focused on search. So the way that I the way that I dealt with reports, I think in pretty much any org, like there got to a point where there were so many reports and so many folders that I never, like I would look at my recent reports and then I would search for the report name. I never had any idea what folder any report was in. And I think, that's the case with a lot of the orgs I work with, and I think the move towards kind of searching for the report you want instead of trying to browse through the list of folders on the side and trying to find the report is a good move, but it's definitely a change, and I'm not 100% comfortable with not having my folders listed on the side yet.
I also think that this gives us a big opportunity to make sure that we're giving our users access to reports in context. One of the most exciting features of Lightning Experience that isn't super exciting to talk about is the rich text component. The component you can drag from every page, and you can just put text in it. You can put links out to resources in it. You can put images in it. So it's a great way of saying, on your account page, here are all the reports that have to do with accounts. Here is links to our donor management documentation. Here is our donor engagement pyramid, so that your user, when they're in the context of working with an opportunity or working with a GIF, they have the access to the documentation and the reporting for that specific task.
And kind of building on one of the things that we've been talking about, I think Michelle and Kim both brought this up earlier, in that Lightning is very flexible, very customizable, and that's almost a limitation sometimes, because you really have to figure out what's the picture I want to paint. And yes, there's a good template out there, but so many of the different capabilities you can do with Lightning that you almost, because you don't know what's possible, you sometimes are go, okay, I'm done kind of thinking about this, and so you can't get across that hurdle of what's that next step to make Lightning really beneficial. So that's a big hurdle that I look at.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. And I think just back to what Christian was saying, if any of you watched Mark's webinar, I think he had a very nice example of how that idea of seeing the bigger picture on the contact or account record with the donations year after year. It's report charts on steroids. Because Michelle has to jump off the call in a few minutes, so before she goes, I wanted to come back to that question that had been asked earlier, about what type of complications are you seeing with the migration? Michelle, do you want to just qualify your use of the word complications?
Sure. So I meant orgs with complications. You just have a very complicated Salesforce setup, not necessarily complications moving over to Lightning. But the biggest thing is, I think, the URL hacks and the custom buttons and things like that. And actually, the Bigger Vote Consulting blog had a great post the other day about how to create the URL hacks and buttons that link to reports that will work whether you're in Classic or Lightning, which makes me really excited. But that was kind of the biggest complication, is if you have an org with a lot of those URL hacks, you are going to, oh yay, and Christian posted it up there, thank you. You are going to have to, take time out and go through each one of those and update them to be Lightning friendly. But that's the biggest thing, and it's doable. It's just work.
And
I would add to that to check your third-party apps on that as well to make sure that they're Lightning ready. And even though they might have a little tag that says Lightning ready, if there's anything else you have to do from a configuration standpoint to make your install of it Lightning ready.
That's a really good point, and I think and just to clarify, these URL hacks are things that you might be using, as you said, Michelle, custom buttons or custom links. If you can go, for example, to a campaign page or to an account page and click through to a report that's customized for that page, that's the sort of thing you have to watch out for, isn't it? Because it's going to work differently in Lightning. Anything else, Michelle, before that you want to say? I mean, you're presumably kind of continuing with the experience, and but have you got any sort of major lessons learned, or are there things that you now know that you'll do differently with the next Lightning client?
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is if you don't think you're ready for Lightning, test it out. Like if you don't think your client's ready for Lightning, if it sounds scary, turn it on in a sandbox, even a partial copy sandbox, and play with it, because that's going to show you kind of really quickly what will break every time that something's in Lightning, and kind of how your user experience will change. And it'll give you a benchmark for how ready your org is to move over to Lightning. And there's no risk. Like, you can switch back to Classic, or if you're in a sandbox, it's just a sandbox. So take advantage of that. It is really easy to turn on and off. And I think if you click on, whose screen are we sharing? But if you click on your little profile icon in the drop-down, it gives you the option to switch back to Classic. So you can say switch to Salesforce Classic. And the same thing from your profile drop-down in Classic, you can switch to Lightning. So very easy to switch back and forth.
And for those of us who've been doing this for a while, we switch to and fro all the time, don't we? Because it's like, where is that thing in Lightning? So let's go to Classic to be able to find it. Michelle, thank you very much indeed. And we'll and yes, Christian, carry on and talk a little bit what you were going to say.
I have a little trick that I would love to share with you all. Kim, would you mind switching back to Classic really quickly? If you, up in the URL bar now, replace home/home.jsp with 1/1.app. So now this tab is going to load that org in the Lightning experience, but if you open another tab for this org, it will still be in Classic, and your user will still be defaulting to Classic every time you open a new browser tab. If you just type in the URL, it will work. If you do it from a link, it won't.
So could you use this trick? You mean if you were in setup in Classic, but you could view things?
Yeah, yep. So this tab will stay in Classic for you, and this tab will stay in Lightning.
Mm-hmm. There you are, little trick from the master. There was a question way back at the beginning from Peter about a roadmap that indicated when the is there a roadmap that indicates when the MPSP functions will be converted to Lightning Experience? Judi, I think you are converted, aren't you?
I thought that would be one for me. Okay, so with MPSP has been around for a long time, and the current version of it started in about 2013, 2014, and one of the core values that we have on every release is do no harm and backwards compatibility. So with that in mind, and safe harbor and all that, I don't anticipate that we're ever going to take something that works now in Classic and change it to a Lightning component, therefore making it impossible for someone to use it in Classic and they must switch to Lightning. Instead, what we're doing is, as we're introducing, just like Salesforce Core is doing, as new features and new functionality comes along that's brand new, we may very well prioritize, and we have Lightning first. We do have Lightning components even currently in MPSP. That managed household page that you are going to, that is a Lightning component. However, we've done it in such a way that it is visible in both Lightning and Classic. So I think that's the direction that you'll likely see MPSP going, with new added functionality that's Lightning components, but not changing what we currently have to be Lightning. We may add a Lightning component that duplicates functionality so that you can add it to a page and have the flexibility and customization that Lightning components brings, and we've done a lot of brainstorming on fun ideas there. But I don't think anybody will ever have to worry that they're going to just log in one day and something they're used to in Classic is going to break because we made it Lightning only. I hope that answered the question.
So in fact, in terms of the non-profit success pack roadmap, there's really no difference between Classic and Lightning, is there? Because everything that you build in the future for NPSP will work in both.
Right.
Face.
We won't build something like, for example, no URL hacks, no JavaScript buttons, nothing that is completely dependent on Classic only. Everything we do is fully compatible in Lightning and has been since the day Lightning was announced, like well over a year ago.
So I think the more, perhaps the roadmap question, Peter, applies a bit more to Salesforce in general, because there are certainly, I think, still some features out in the wider Salesforce world that need to catch up to Lightning. And I don't know whether anyone has it to hand, but I think during the webinar you posted a link to a roadmap that Salesforce itself. There we go. Thank you, Christian, which gives you an idea of what's on generally for the whole Salesforce platform, of what's on their roadmap.
And this document is very clear about what is not yet in Lightning. There's things that have check marks in the future, are things that are not yet in Lightning, and there's no known time for. So that's the column you need to look at when you're evaluating whether or not it's going to be impactful.
So we had.
I think I look at this roadmap almost daily. Kind of building on what we're talking about, this roadmap. And even migrating, there's a lot of different things that you're trying to figure out. Is Lightning right for me, and what are the things that I need to make sure work in Lightning that worked in Classic? And that's where the benefits of working in the sandbox and flipping the switch and things like that work. And then going to this and saying, hey, I couldn't figure out if this worked or not, and looking at this roadmap, and/or going to the idea exchange. That's the other big thing I would mention today, is that there's a lot of ideas. So what's showing here in summer is pretty well said. There may be some things that are going to change with that future section. That's really where we can help shape what are the things that Salesforce focuses on. So if you run into something that doesn't work, create it on the idea exchange, and/or vote up other ideas that are out there.
That's a great piece of advice. So there is a couple of questions. We'll get, I think, in a moment to the whole idea of testing and how you can test. Does anyone have any answers to Simon Abramson's question? Are there any workarounds for printing reports in Lightning? I know an awful lot of nonprofit organizations still like to print reports. Anybody got any ideas on that one?
I just learned about an app that will at least let you print your page layout, your detail view in Lightning, but I don't know anything about reports.
I'm going to continue on my idea exchange trick and post the idea exchange on this topic.
There we go. So yeah, at the moment, maybe not. And it's, I suppose it's a lot about encouraging people to look at reports. You can still export them, presumably. It's that sort of printable view where you could see summaries and things like that before and charts. That's the problem one, I assume. And thank you, Mark, for the reminder that this is a general idea exchange for the whole Salesforce community, the Salesforce.com community. There is something very specific to nonprofits as well, but in what Nick and Christian are talking about and the ideas of posting in the go to the Salesforce.com community. Thank you for that, Mark. Okay, let's go back to this question that was posed by Shia about testing. So there's this thing about if you have a partial or full data sandbox. Michelle had recommended testing in a sandbox, and in a moment I'll post a resource for how you can get some data into your sandbox. But if you didn't necessarily want to do that, but perhaps you wanted to test just maybe the system admin in the organization, is that possible to do? And I think so, about kind of taking one of your profiles and converting that to Lightning.
Yeah, you can do it with a permission set for a profile or a person.
Yeah. Could you say a little more, Kim?
Yeah, so there's a Lightning Experience user, I think it's a system permission, and you can create a permission set and just give that permission set that particular option to check that box, and then assign it to yourself or a group of users that you want to test, and then you would be the only ones in your org that have the ability to switch back and forth between Lightning and Classic, so you can do your testing that way. And the other thing that I'd like to point out is, please run that Lightning Experience report. And I can show you it. It doesn't do anything to your org other than analyze it and send it to you via email. It's a nice little PDF, but it is hugely helpful in understanding for your particular org what needs to happen, or here's some things, like you have a URL link here, you might want to do something about that. It's going to show you for your whole org. There may be pieces of your org you're not using, but it's super helpful. So between those two things, you should have a good jump on some testing, whether you do that in a sandbox. Sandbox is preferred, even if it's a data-free sandbox. But just click this Evaluate My Org on Check Your Readiness, and it'll give you this cool report that you can look at. And Mark showed it on his webinar the other day. It is a really great report.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also, Mark, you got asked in the questions to build a permission set. So you can actually watch Mark's webinar to figure out how to do the permission set as well. Let's, plenty of options for testing. Let's talk a little bit about the admin experience, because I think that's, and setup and things, and I can take presenter back, or if you don't mind, Kim, sticking with it, because I know that for me that's where I have some problems at the moment. Is just, I think it's just getting used to it, because the layout is really quite different, isn't it? Set up in Lightning, where you find objects, where you find record types.
It's hugely different. It's a lot of getting used to.
And again, I think it's not that anything has disappeared. It's that it's just kind of in a different place, isn't it?
Yeah. The big one I find is, for example, in regular setup, you have your customize for your standard objects and all of the things associated with each one here, and then you have your create objects for all of your custom objects. over here, and you click on those and you can get to all of the different pieces of that pie. And over in Lightning, you go to Objects, an Object Manager, and everything is here together. And so you don't have like accounts and then a drop down for page layouts and fields, etc. You just click on account, or you click on my trailhead camping item object, and it's all the same. It's very similar to how your custom objects in Classic work, where you have different places for your fields and all of your page layouts and stuff. But it's all sort of here. I got frustrated early on with my fields, sort of. If I had a bunch of fields, I had to page around, but I did learn the trick of find and page. So if I was looking for a field that started with the letter T and it was a number of pages away, I could just start typing in here and it would start to narrow down for me. This is a helpful feature.
Anybody else? I mean, one of the things I found a little is that sort of clicking back between, I'm used to sort of clicking back to like if I've been looking at a record type, of clicking back to the list of record types. Christian, have you got any great tricks for navigating around in setup in Lightning?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Kim already hit it on with one tip, which is that find and page. The other thing that I think is really important to note is that search bar at the top, once you're in setup, is going to search setup items. So that is going to search your objects. That's going to search your field names. If you type in camping item and hit search, it will do it in setup, which is pretty awesome. So I just find it generally easier, just like in Classic, in setup, we always use that quick find box to get to places. Using search and quick find is going to make your life easier, and the UI is definitely designed for you to do that.
And do you find that it's interesting now because both standard and custom objects are in the same object manager. Do you like that feature?
Yeah, I love it. I think it's great just to know that's where, if I'm dealing with fields, that's where I go. Sometimes I'm a doofus, and I'm like, opportunity, donation, that's custom, cool, let's keep going. No.
How about for you, Kim? What do you like about the object manager?
I'm getting to like it. I like it. I'm getting to like it more. I'm just so used to customize and create. But I will say that from a training, an admin at a client org, they don't always know the difference between, well, this was a standard object, so you need to go over here, versus this is something I built for you custom, so you need to go to this other place. This helps them, I think, quite a bit.
Yeah, and I think, really smart things happen, like moving some of the sales features into feature settings / sales, moving some of the service features into feature settings, moving stuff that have to do with those standard objects out of that ridiculously long customized list and into a node that's specifically about what you're trying to do, makes it a lot easier to, that campaign influence is going to be under sales because it's part of the sales app, not somewhere deep in the object manager.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, isn't it? Because if any of you have ever created opportunity record types, you need to create a sales process first. And I was looking for sales process somewhere around opportunity, but it's interesting. It's in a different place, isn't it now?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. And contact roles have moved around too. Do we have? Sorry, go ahead, whoever was going to speak.
Oh, sure, yeah, this is Nick. The main thing that I have going on my end is forcing myself to use Lightning setup on the back end. For someone like myself that has been using setup, you start knowing click, or search, this is where it's at. And you can do it so quickly in Classic that this is where kind of, as an admin, you're having a user adoption issue. And so, forcing yourself to do some of these things in Lightning and at the same time knowing that it's going to take longer. So if you're saying, hey, I need to do X, Y, and Z, trying to make sure you either do it where you're blocking off time so then you're not frazzled by trying to get the solution solved, all while trying to learn the interface. That's been a big hurdle for me to overcome.
Yeah, I think something that, like, it's easy to forget is this is a brand new platform, essentially. This is brand new software that we have to learn. And sometimes it's easy to get in that mindset of, I know Salesforce pretty well. I should be able to just figure this out without reading the documentation. And that's not true always.
So let's just, unless we've got comments and not necessarily questions, let's just take a moment to talk about some of the things that you get in Lightning that really are different. And I think I'm thinking, well, first of all, maybe we could talk a little bit about actions, which obviously is a replacement for custom buttons. But then Mark also in the webinar talked a little bit about Lightning component, the kind of the designer and Lightning components, things like that. And without getting into a huge amount of detail, I think I'm also directing this at Christian, but I would be interested to know what you've done, Kim. Are there some really cool things that you have done in Lightning that you wouldn't have been able to do before in Classic? Never mind just replacing things. Is there lots of new stuff? And Trish, Trish had a question. Is there any "Where's my stuff" documentation? I think the answer you're getting today is search, because you can find everything. But has anybody else got a good resource on that?
If you want to pass the presenter to me, I can do a little action demo.
And Kim, I think you may be talking to your mute button, because I can see that that your screen is changing. There you go.
Yeah, no, I haven't built anything super cool yet, so.
All right. Go on. I think, Christian, you just offered to take presenter, so.
Yeah.
Let's do that. So this is, hi, we can see your face. You're also talking to your mute, I think. There we go.
Yeah, I was. Hi. Can you see my screen?
We can see your screen.
Awesome. I want to show off really quickly something about quick actions that I really love. Quick actions live up here, and they are the replacement for custom buttons using URL hacks to pre-fill stuff. So what we're looking at right now is a record called a service authorization. It's essentially a contract for services, and it has a number of authorized hours on it. So we have an action to update that number. So let's take it up to 15. And one of the things I love is that that number has actually updated. That's a roll-up. We've refreshed the related list down here. If this report chart had been related to authorized hours logs, it would refresh as well, without reloading the entire page and having to have that full Classic page load again. So actions just make things go a little bit smoother and faster. And Mark just asked about green bar, and that's a little custom component that we built that is just calculating how much of that has been used.
Do you mind talking us through a little bit more on this page, Christian? Because I think, there are some things that are different here. There's that idea of the compact layout, what you put in the kind of the header of the page. And then, generally the navigation is a little different. So.
Yeah, so that first thing that Caroline just brought up is the compact layout. When you're in the Lightning App Builder, it's also known as the highlights panel. But otherwise in setup, it's called the compact layout. Gotta have two names for everything. And it's this section right here at the top, and it allows you to pick up to 7 fields to display as that header. And those 7 fields are going to display as that header, both in the Lightning experience and in the mobile app in Salesforce 1. So it's a good way just to get the quick pieces of information that you need to see very soon, or even take action off of right at the top of the page. So one thing we like to do is looking at detail records like opportunities or cases or things like this, a service authorization that are related to a person or an account. One of those first fields we have up here is that actual person or account. So when you hover over it, you can get that little bit more information and really quickly nav over to them if that's what you're trying to do. And that compact layout, stays at the top of the page. You'll get that first field the entire time, and those other 6 fields, or 4 in this case, before you scroll down. And it's just a really good way of highlighting the most important information on your page. And then most Lightning pages are broken into kind of 2 sections, a main and a sidebar. There's also a layout that has 3 big columns, so you might see that as well. And here we're using kind of the standard pattern of having details on a tab, our related lists on a tab, and some sort of analysis in the sidebar. The sidebar often will also have chatter or the activity timeline, but it's usually a good place just to have that quick view of the status of what's happening. So on a record like an opportunity, that might be the activity timeline where you want to see what the most recent thing I did is. Here we like to have a little bit of analysis, and that's just a report chart built in Lightning Uploader. These report charts are great. They are configured just like how you would have done it in Classic, but you can have a bunch more.
So that's like the embedded charts that you used to have, yeah. But as you say, a lot
just
more.
Like in Classic. Yeah. So you can put as many as you want. You can drag them around. But just like in Classic, it's just filtered by that ID field on a report of your choosing.
Trish put in a question, did anybody ask how to set up the menu bar? I think you've just asked, Trish. And what do you mean by the menu bar? Do you mean in a particular record? Are you talking about tabs? Tabs. Christian, do you mind showing the app picker?
I would be happy to.
And anyone else on the panel who wants to, do feel free to chime in if you've got other things to say. We'll just that. Go ahead.
In the Lightning experience, tabs live in the app manager. So just like in Classic, your tabs that you see are controlled by your app, but your app does a little bit more now than just tabs. So that main thing is on the select items page of the app manager, you can pick which tabs you want. But you can also set the image, you can set a color, as you saw in this org. That color is seen as this underbar, so that color shows up as a highlight in places. Sorry. But yeah, you can set a nicer description. You can move the app into console navigation, which is going to open your records and sub-tabs and things. You can add a utility bar item like the Chatter Publisher, a flow, a filtered list, and as always, you assign it to user profiles, just like you would have in Classic.
And building on the concept of the app, I mean, with Lightning apps there's a whole new layer of what does an app, and Christian, I think you kind of alluded to it there a little bit with how you can select an app, and that will change the page layout for a particular object. So for instance, you could have, based on what app you select, a contact page layout change by which app it is, not necessarily end with a profile. So a particular profile could have 5 different page layouts based on 5 different apps that I may be in.
Which is a lot more power, but also a lot more admin responsibility, isn't it?
That's interesting. Yes, as you were saying that, Nick, my mind was kind of leaping to the possibilities and then thinking, gosh, that's going to be a lot to organize.
I know, right? One page layout per object is enough.
And per profile. Have you, but do you have an example of where you've used that so far?
I haven't. The two big tool things that I have today, ironically, I don't have any examples for. That's the one item I don't have a really good example for. The other item is the fact that we can now do calendaring features. And so I'll post the release notes on that one, but effectively, if I can calendar anything now out of Salesforce in Lightning. So that's a really nifty feature that I'm excited to get my get my hand on.
Yeah, calendaring is an interesting one. I know Mark talked a little bit about the Kanban view, which I think is very useful. And then there is this idea that you can calendar things. Might be useful for campaigns, grants, perhaps grant opportunities. Anybody else got any examples of anything that they're calendaring?
In the new trials, actually, your volunteer shifts are calendared out of the box, which is pretty awesome.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Okay, we have she has come back with another question. The report that we were talking about that evaluates the organization and says whether you're lightning ready, and how long does it take to report? Okay, thank you, Mark. Says it's usually about 10 to 15 minutes. Is that one of those things that depends a bit on how many records you have, or maybe how many custom objects? Depends on the workload.
It depends on how many other customers are trying to run that report at the same time.
Everybody from the webinar is rushing to do it.
If you did not receive the email from that report for whatever reason, it will also upload to the Files tab in your org. So check the Files tab because we all know email is the worst.
Cool. Which is not right. Does anyone have any? We've got a couple more minutes. Any last quick questions? And I think also because we have a couple of minutes to the panel members, is there any one sort of more quick thing that you'd like to say that we haven't covered about this? I think between this conversation and all the great material that Mark presented 2 days ago, that should give people a really good, lots to think about, I think, and a good introduction. Kim?
Yeah, I have put this in the chat window, but I think it's something that, anything new is fearful, especially when you get muscle memory and are used to it. But the thing to remember clearly is that this is a change in user interface, how you see the data you have, how you interact with the data you have. It does not actually change the data. So you can jump in and out, back and forth 1,000 times a day. You can test it, try to stay in Lightning, have users stay. It isn't going to break anything. It isn't suddenly going to change how your contacts are organized. It is just that user interface layer. So yes, it's fearful to try something new, but you're not hurting anything to try it. And there's some great trailheads too. That there's a bunch of them, and I think Mark had them in the webinar as well, for how to get around, how to get used to it. But you're not breaking anything by trying.
Thank you. That's a very good note to end on. Actually, that's great reassurance. Thank you for that, Judi, and thank you, Mark, for posting the slides and to the webinar the other day. And also the link that I'd posted will get you both to the slides and the recording. And this session has also been recorded. I know we've had a few problems with the audio, but I can make that available too. So thank you very much indeed to Christian, to Kim, to Nick, to Michelle, to Judy, and also Mark for joining us from the airport or the plane, whatever it was. Thank you very much for the questions. Thank you to everyone who came and listened in. And as we have said many times before, let's keep this conversation going in the Power of Us Hub. And there is specifically a Migrate to Lightning experience group in the Power of Us Hub. So bring your questions, bring your comments, and join us there.